the basic news is that all Tesla vehicles exiting the factory have the hardware necessary for level 5 autonomy. So that's in terms of the cameras and compute power. It's every car we make, so on the order of 2,000 cars a week, are shipping now with level 5, meaning hardware capable of full self-driving or driverless capability. So it'll take us some time, into the future to complete validation of the software and obviously get the required regulatory approval. But the important thing is that the foundation is laid for the cars to be fully autonomous at a safety level we believe to be at least twice that of a person, maybe better. So I think that's probably unexpected by most that it's happening right now. So yeah, we're pretty excited about that, and that's also essentially part 2 of the Model 3 announcement, which is that Model 3 will also have the hardware necessary for full autonomy. In fact, all cars that Tesla makes from here on out will have the hardware needed to be fully autonomous or driverless. That's where things are, and this is all Tesla Vision software. So we're not using any third-party software or anything for the vision processing. This is a Tesla-developed neural net, and yeah, although it's somewhat hardware independent, it could be. We could actually run this on NVIDIA, AMD, or Intel. We did pick the NVIDIA Titan GPU as the main chip for the neural net, but it was a pretty tight call particularly between AMD and NVIDIA. But ultimately, we thought NVIDIA had the better hardware. So that's kind of where that's I think pretty huge news. Now with that, we can go into questions.
Okay, our first question is from Nikki Gordon Bloomfield from Transport Evolved LLC. Your microphone is now open.
Yeah, good evening, Elon. I've got 2 questions. I don't know if you're in the place to answer 2, so please pick one if not. Autopilot's proven very reliable thus far with minimal problems with its safety, but I'm asking if Tesla will be offering indemnity against crashes involving fully autonomous autopilot mode in much the same way as Volvo is promising to do when level 5 autonomy is activated on your vehicle.
No, I think that would be up to the individual's insurance. I mean, just like it's if it's something endemic to our design, certainly we would take responsibility for that. But I think one should view sort of autonomous cars much like an elevator in a building. Does Otis take responsibility for all elevators around the world? No, they don't. What really matters at the end of the day here is what is the absolute safety level. I mean, one of the things I should mention that, frankly, has been quite disturbing to me is the degree of media coverage of Autopilot crashes, which are basically almost none, relative to the paucity of media coverage of the 1.2 million people that die every year in manual crashes, is something that I think does not reflect well upon the media. It really doesn't. Because, and really you need to think carefully about this, because if in writing some article that's negative, you effectively dissuade people from using an autonomous vehicle, you're killing people. Next question.
Our next question comes from Jack Stewart from Wired. Your line is now open.
Hey, good evening. I was wondering, Elon, if you could just spell out how you see this rollout of autonomous features happening once these cars start to become enabled? The press release says that new features will become available bit by bit. How do you see that? Are we going to see full city driving straight away, or a more limited feature set?
Yeah, so since this is a new platform, although we've been spending, we've spent more than a year in testing, the feature set initially will be disabled, at least for the first few months. The hardware, the cars with hardware 2, what we call hardware 2, which is sort of the full autonomy suite, will actually have fewer features than cars with hardware 1. So we expect to reach feature parity following field validation of hardware 2 probably in December, so maybe 2 or 3 months from now. So for the next 2 or 3 months, actually, a hardware 1 car will be better than a hardware 2 car. And then approximately every 2 or 3 months thereafter is when we expect to release significant improvements in autonomous capability. And our goal is, and I feel pretty good about this goal, is that we'll be able to do a demonstration drive of full autonomy all the way from LA to New York. So basically from a home in LA to, let's say, dropping you off in Times Square in New York and having the car go and park itself by the end of next year, without the need for a single touch, including the charger.
What is happening to Autopilot in the vehicles with the new hardware? Could you speak specifically to that?
What is happening to Autopilot in the vehicles with the new hardware? Well, the new hardware is what will enable self-driving, which is different from Autopilot. Autopilot is a term that's been in use for more than half a century as an assistance, a flying assistant in aircraft for pilots. That's why we chose to use it. It does not represent self-driving any more than Autopilot in aircraft makes an aircraft self-flying.
So I'm just trying to understand. So the Autopilot, which has been associated with your advanced driver assistance technology here, up until now, is that what happens to that system? What happens to that name, if you will, as you go forward with this new hardware? It's just not clear from the release, and I just want to understand how you're handling that.
Yeah, there's basically there'll be two. There'll be two options for buying our car. One is what we call enhanced Autopilot, which is kind of quite similar to what the Autopilot that we had been offering, except that it's got redundant forward cameras, and it has a left rear camera and a right rear camera, as well as a significantly improved ultrasonic sonar and much more computing power. The net effect of enhanced Autopilot is you should be able to go from freeway on-ramp to exit, as well as transitioning between multiple freeways and passing and maneuvering around other cars without touching anything with enhanced Autopilot. Then there's sort of the full self-driving capability, which will take care of the much more complex situations in urban environments. And so there'll be two options that people can pick in buying the car. Either basically an improved version of Autopilot or full self-driving. So one's kind of 4 cameras, the other's 8 cameras. That's sort of what will happen. Now the hardware 1 Autopilot vehicles will continue to improve with improved software, as the fleet learning, as we accumulate more miles. It will continue to get better and better. But it is limited by the fundamental hardware that's on the hardware 1 cars, in that there's only one forward camera. They're ultrasonics, but they have half the range and resolution. It has the radar, and so there's within the context of that sensor suite, the hardware one cars will continue to get better over time.
Thank you. Our next question is from David Baker from the San Francisco Chronicle. Your line is now open.
Thanks for doing the call. I actually wanted to follow up on exactly what you were talking there. Could you walk us through the differences between the hardware suite on the existing Autopilot cars that are out there and this new suite? In other words, you were talking about more cameras, better sensor range. Could you just detail each of those changes?
Yeah, absolutely. So we go from one camera to 8 cameras, and three of which are forward cameras. So we have redundancy in the forward camera, is sort of looking forward, and we have 360-degree coverage, visual coverage around the car. So that's a pretty big upgrade. The compute power increases by a factor of 40, so 40x increase in compute power. So it's a gigantic increase in computing power. In fact, the computer will be capable of 12 trillion operations per second. So it's basically a supercomputer in a car. And then the ultrasonic sensors are next generation ultrasonic sonar, which have about twice the range and resolution of the current sonar, and that's also 360 degrees. I mean, there's also some other minor things like the GPS is more accurate and provides more frequent updates, and there's some other minor sensor improvements on the IMU, the initial measurement unit, and a few other areas.
Hey, Elon, I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on the regulations around this? Is it going to be limited based on, in Texas you can do this and in California you can do that and it's going to be different, or are you just going to say everyone everywhere can do it? What do you think on the regulatory side?
Well, it's not up to us. It's up to the regulators. Hopefully, in the U.S., things do not become balkanized so that it's different in every state, because I think that would be detrimental to the U.S. consumer. And I think in the EU, it's like fairly confident it'll be a uniform standard. So it's really a question of what does the public think is appropriate, what do regulators think is appropriate, and gathering enough data, because the system will always be operating in shadow mode, so we can gather a large volume of statistical data to show the false positives and false negatives. When would the computer have acted, and would that have prevented an accident? Or if the computer would have acted and that would have produced an accident, we can think, but that's operating in shadow mode, so we can say when would it have incorrectly acted or not acted, compare that to what should have been done in the real world, and then at the point at which it is a statistically significant result that shows like a material improvement over the accident rates for manually driven cars, I think at that point regulators are likely to be comfortable approving it. But that approval process really could be radically different from one part of the world to another. It's not something within our control.
One last just follow-up to that is, you talk about rolling out new features every 2 to 3 months. Will the regulatory environment in the U.S. or the EU or wherever hold you back from rolling out those improvements, or will you roll them out and then ask forgiveness instead of permission if you think that it's safer?
Well, I mean, we've always rolled out our autonomous functionality within the regulatory framework of any given country. So this is not a pleading forgiveness on permission. We work. We look carefully at the regulations and make sure that what we do is in line with those. We can't do anything other than that because it would be against the law.
Hi, Elon. Thanks for taking this. I'm wondering, is there, now that you're moving on to hardware 2 and you're going to keep working with hardware 1, is there a point at which you'll reach a maximum of potential for hardware 1, and then you need to, an owner will need to upgrade to a newer car to get the full self-driving capability you can offer?
Self-driving will definitely need hardware 2, which is what we're shipping as of this week. It's just because you don't, you just can't do this with one camera. You need 8 cameras to be self-driving. You also need a lot more computing power to run the vision, basically the vision AI. So upgrading hardware 1 cars is not realistic. It would be like giving the car a spinal cord transplant, wise. So, even if possible, best to be avoided. But I should say that people that have hardware 1 cars should bear in mind that their car will actually have more functionality than a hardware 2 car, at least until December or maybe later. And it's probably sometime next year before the hardware 2 functionality starts to exceed hardware 1. And there's also a higher cost for the autonomous functionality. So it's not, there's a higher price to pay. Like for the full self-driving, to activate the full self-driving hardware suite, it's $8,000. So that's as compared to the hardware 1 Autopilot, which is $3,000. So there's meaningful price difference, and the hardware 1 actually has more functionality, at least for the next several months. I wish there was some other way to do it. This is not, it's just, I don't know how to go into old cars and install another 7 cameras and a new wiring harness. So there's no, it's just, I wish we could do it some other way, but there isn't some other, there isn't, so.
Hi, I was wondering if you plan on making this a kit that other car makers could use.
I think this is very hard to turn into a kit because it requires a tight integration of software, sensors, and computing power, as well as the ability to do large-scale over-the-air updates. It's not just some kit that you can add onto a car. I mean, one thing that we've also done with our system is that and we'll be releasing some videos hopefully later tonight and tomorrow morning demonstrating the car in operation. But you actually can't, unless you look closely, you can't even tell that a car is hardware 1 or hardware 2, because we've been so careful about each of the cameras being part of the frame of the car, such that like nothing's sticking out, nothing. Like this in no way makes the car ugly. So there are no weird protuberances. It's all incredibly subtle. It's put a lot of effort into not affecting the beauty of the car. The car is as beautiful with hardware 2 as it is with hardware 1. And there's just no way to turn that into a kit and put it in some other car. It's not realistic. Yeah.
I was interested in your thoughts, if you could expand your thoughts a little bit about the safety issue. How statistics aren't collected on how safe a car is, only how dangerous it is. So how do you communicate the idea that your semi-autonomous cars are in fact safer?
It's not that difficult. I mean, simply say, how many miles have been driven, and then how many deaths, serious injuries, meaning like an unrecoverable injury, or minor accidents were there. And obviously, there are many more sort of minor accidents, and serious accidents than there are fatalities. So that provides a much richer statistical sample set for comparing the relative safety of autonomy versus not autonomy. And we see consistently significantly better results with autonomy than without. And that just gets better over time as the system is further refined.
Hi, Elon. I have a quick question about inclement weather and how has hardware 2 improved over hardware 1?
Well, inclement weather, you mean does it work in snow and stuff like that, or what do you mean by inclement weather?
Sorry. Anytime, say, there's potential for condensation or precipitation on the cameras tends to be a problem. How have you dealt with that?
Oh yeah, so there are heater elements around on all of the camera surfaces. So it can it's actually we have that on hardware 1 as well. So it just automatically heats it up to prevent snow and ice. And then the positioning of the cameras is in a location where there's very unlikely to be dust or ice accumulation. So the triple cameras are all 3 forward cameras are basically in front of the rear view mirror and in the wipe zone of the car. And then the sideways looking cameras are in the B pillar. They're sort of high up in the B pillar. That's the sort of pillar in between the front and rear passengers. And then there's the rear. There's left rear and a right rear camera, and those are nested in the side repeaters. And so that they're out of the flow of rain and snow and whatnot. And then the rear camera is on the lift gate just above the license plate, but sort of tucked under. So you actually have to look carefully to see any of the cameras, but they're all in places where it's quite difficult for dirt or ice or snow to accumulate. If one of them is blocked, the system can actually tell that it has some opacity reduction and can alert the occupants in the car to clean off the camera.
Hi, you mentioned that this is related to the Model 3 and the Part 2 unveiling, and I just kind of wanted to focus a little bit on more of that and how it really applies to Model 3, and is this all going to come standard on Model 3? Will there be a way to upgrade like there is now from what is included as far as the software standard and what's paid?
Yeah, the full autonomy hardware suite will be standard on all vehicles that Tesla makes from here on out. We'll continue to make improvements, and those improvements will affect the probability of an accident. But we feel pretty confident that the current hardware suite will be at least twice as good as as people on average. Now, in the long term, we want to try to get to a 10x improvement, and so that will require ongoing refinement of the hardware. But still, I think something like a 2x improvement would be pretty incredible. I mean, if that was applied across the board to cars, to all vehicles in the world, you'd go from 1.2 million deaths to 600,000 deaths. That'd be a lot of lives saved, and not to mention all the, the serious injuries and other things that happen that aren't in the fatality statistics. So, so I think there's still a lot of merit in trying to go from twice as safe to 10 times as safe. But I should be clear that every car Tesla produces from here on out will have the full autonomy hardware capability, including Model 3.
Hey, Elon. One of the questions that kind of keeps coming to mind here is, how do you know, what kind of testing are you doing to be confident at each stage that that the system is safe or is functioning enough to be confident to put it in there? Because it's difficult to come up with. I mean, maybe it's not difficult. What sort of testing are you doing to ensure that these systems are working well?
Yeah, it's actually it's not all that difficult. I mean, we start off obviously with testing with Tesla, with our Tesla QA team. So we're testing initially on a closed track with our test engineers. Then we'll broaden it to a very limited set of kind of alpha users, including me. So I usually have the latest software update about a day after our QA team has it. And I'm personally testing every element of the car. Then it goes to what we call our early access program, which is about 1,000 customers distributed around the world who are technically savvy and don't mind, or want to use sort of the early software and are cognizant of potential issues. But because there's so many different environments throughout Earth that it's just not possible for our QA team to cover them all. If that's looking good, then we will roll it out initially in shadow mode to the whole fleet. By shadow mode, it means that the car is not actually taking any action, but it is registering when it would take an action and when it would not take an action. And then you can compare that to cases where, let's say that somebody has an accident, but you can look at the vehicle logs and say, well, if the car had been in autonomous mode, that accident would have been avoided. Then okay, that's obviously a plus. You can also say, okay, the car the car computer would have done something that would have resulted in an accident. In that case, it's in shadow mode. Then obviously that's an issue that needs to be corrected. And then in statistics, I mean, these are called false positives and false negatives. You gather enough of those over time until there's clearly a statistically significant sample set. And at the point at which it's unequivocal that turning on an autonomy feature would improve safety, that is the point at which we allow it to actually take action. Before that, we do not allow the computer to take action.
Hi, thanks for making time. Just a couple clarifications on some things. Are you talking about the new hardware 2 being level 4 or level 5? And just to be clear on hardware 1, is there going to be any disabling of that technology at this point, or does it continue to run as is? Thank you.
It will be, the hardware 2 is capable of level 5 autonomy. In other words, the hardware is capable of the highest level of autonomy. Hardware 1, I think will continue to improve. As we improve the software that operates the car. I mean, already with 7.0, it was unequivocally safer than manually driven cars, and with 8.0, that has improved even more. So it would obviously be crazy to turn off something that is preventing accidents.
Hey, Elon, just quickly, the 40X supercomputer you described, is it separate from, does it have to be separate from all other vehicle system technology at this point, or is it integrated with other vehicle technologies?
No, it's a good question. It is isolated from the rest of the vehicle. So the kind of infotainment, sort of entertainment instrument panel, the center cluster, anything to do with entertainment or web browsing is isolated from the vehicle control computer.
Okay, great. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely don't want to be have the car crash as a result of going to the wrong website.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for attending the Tesla press conference.